Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope everyone will have a great Shabbos. This week's pre-Shabbos video Dvar Torah is sponsored by John and Sarah Abbott in memory of John's uncle, Leslie Eulis Lipa ben Yona Gedalia Zechrona Levracha, whose yahrzeit was recently observed. And thank you, John and Sarah. And we hope that John, your uncle's neshama, should have an aliyah, and his memory should continue to be a blessing for the entire family. Although we take it for granted, punctuation, periods, commas, question marks, was only invented in ancient Greece around the year 500 BCE, about 2,500 years ago. And before that time, all ancient texts were just an undivided stream, flow of letters or at least words. There were no periods, there were no commas, there were no question marks. And of course, since the Torah is about 1,000 years older, predates that invention of the symbols of punctuation, the Torah does not have any punctuation. If you open up a Torah, it's just straight words, no punctuation whatsoever. Of course, we have a very old tradition of how to divide psukim, which is something similar to a sentence, but there are no commas, there are no certainly question marks, exclamation points, quotation marks. And because of that, there are certain psukim in the Torah that if we would have punctuation, if Hashem would have provided punctuation, they would have been clear. But since no punctuation was originally provided in the original text, some things were left ambiguous. They could be read in more than one way, and the commentaries argued about how to understand the verse in question. And we have such an example almost at the end of this week's parsha. The Torah is describing and commanding the Jewish army how it should act in times of war. And one of the mitzvahs is that when the Jewish army will be attacking a city of our enemy, besieging the city, we shouldn't just wantonly destroy the area around it. It shouldn't be a scorched earth policy. And in particular, ki tatsor el ir yamim rabim, when you're besieging a city, lo tashchit et etza, don't just indiscriminately chop down, destroy all the trees, derive pleasure from destroying the property of our enemies. Ki mimenu tochel v'oto lo tichrot, you should appreciate it. You can eat the fruit of the tree, but don't unnecessarily chop it down. And now, the critical phrase. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh lavo mipanacha b'matzur. Read in context, the phrase seems to be a rhetorical question. We don't have a question mark. But a rhetorical question, ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, meaning, is a tree of the field a person that should fall under your siege? Meaning, is the tree your enemy? Is he one of the combatants of the other nation? He is not. What did the tree do? You're not fighting the tree, so don't destroy the tree. However, if you take the critical phrase out of context, ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, if you take just those four words, the grammar implies that it should be read not as a rhetorical question, but as a statement of fact. For a person, ki ha'adam, a human being, eitz hasadeh, is a tree of the field. There's an equation between a person, a human, and a living, growing tree. And the tree as a metaphor or simile for a person is found throughout Tanakh and in the teachings of our sages. We will say tonight in Friday night davening, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tehillim 92. It compares the wicked to grass that sprout up but quickly die out. However, Tzaddik Katamar Yifrach, Ke'eres Ba'avon Yiskeh, but the righteous person flourishes like a date palm. He grows tall like a cedar of Lebanon. Shisulim B'Veis Hashem B'Chatzros Elokeinu Yafrichu, the righteous, they are planted in the house of Hashem and the courtyards of our God. They flourish. The righteous, they are fruitful even in old age. They are vigorous and fresh until the end of their lives. So that they can declare that Hashem is upright, that my rock, there is no wrong in him. The righteous and all human beings are like trees, are like beautiful trees. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says that, continues the comparison of a person to a tree. It says just like a tree needs to have roots in the ground, a person needs to be rooted spiritually. And just like a tree, a person is also meant to grow and to produce beautiful leaves and flowers and fruit. And therefore, a person's masim, a person's good deeds, should be greater than their wisdom. The good deeds are our roots, and our wisdom, our thoughts, what we study, are the beautiful fruit that we produce. And so on and so on. Many people have mined this comparison, this equation between a human being and a tree. However, it occurred to me a new detail, a new aspect to see in the comparison between a person and a tree. And very briefly, here it is. When a tree is cut down, you can look at it and you see the rings, and you can count the rings, and you know that that is how old the tree is. Each ring represents 1 year. And the reason why we can see rings for every year of the tree's life is because a tree does not grow evenly, continuously throughout the year, but it has spurts of growth during the warmer half of the year. It grows during that warmer half of the year, and then during the cold half, it is dormant, doesn't grow, and then it grows again. So it grows again in bursts, so to speak, and therefore you can see them in the rings of a tree. Furthermore, when you look at the rings of a tree, you'll see that some are thinner and some are thicker. Why is that? Well, because some years there was more rain, or some years, for whatever reason, the tree got more sunlight, or there were more nutrients in the ground, and so it grew more that year. In that critical time of growth, it had more of the stuff that it needed, so it grew more, and so you can see that in a thicker ring. And there are other years when it didn't have as much, and therefore there's a thinner ring of growth. A human is like a tree. We don't just grow continuously at an even pace. There are critical periods in our lives, and there are critical periods in the year when spiritually that is the time of growth, and that is the time when it's critical to get the spiritual nutrients and rain and sunlight that we need. We may not feel it, but inside of us, Hashem looks inside of us and He sees the rings of our lives. Every year there's another ring. Just like a tree, you may not notice the growth from year to year. We may not notice our growth from year to year, but we do. We grow every year. And inside of ourselves, there is a ring with a Hebrew date on it. We are concluding Tafshin Pei Bet and about to begin Tafshin Pei Gimel. This time of year, Elul, preparing for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, this is one of our critical periods of spiritual growth. And now is the time to make sure that we will get the spiritual rain and sunlight and nutrients that we need to have a year of growth. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, those, of course, are the highlights, the critical days, but is the weeks leading up to it. That if we find time to prepare, find time to read something, to listen to something, to self-reflect, to journal, just find time to think about the time period in which we are in, to think about ourselves, to think about what I want to change, how I want to become a better person, how I want to become closer to Hashem. Now is the time to take in and make sure we are getting the spiritual, the Torah, sunlight and rain and nutrients to make sure that we'll have a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur of growth. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. Every person, each of us, we are a living, growing tree, and we hope that this Elul, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and this entire year will be a year of beautiful growth for us all. Good Shabbos, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.